What's going on, everyone, and welcome into Plaisance Podcast, filled to the brim with glitchy analysis and freezing cold takes, so cold that they're boiling hot. In this episode, we are going to begin our Big 12 college football preview. We're going to be talking about Arizona State first. Let's go ahead and get into the star players. At running back, Cam Scatterbo, he's going to be the rushing leader. If this offense is going to have success, it's going to be behind him. He's going to be a 1,000-yard back, in my opinion. It's somebody that is going to be reliable, especially on the early downs, first and second. I think that this Arizona team is going to basically put themselves on Cam Scattergo's back. So we're going to see a lot of him this year. And then on defense, you got Shamari Simmons, the safety. He was one of the tackle leaders last year, and I expect more from him this year. When it comes to run stopping, I think this guy is a really good safety. Maybe not one of the best in the country, but he still has the talent to compete at a high level. And then Clayton Smith, the defensive end. If it comes to setting the edge and getting to the quarterback, Clayton Smith is going to be your guy to watch. I think that this Arizona State team has got some decent talent, and these are definitely guys that kind of step over that line and go into good, if not great, talent. So let's talk about a couple storylines. Then we'll get into the key losses and additions for this team. And then, of course, we're going to get into the record prediction. Let's go ahead and talk about Kenny Dillingham's rebuild. This is his second year in Arizona State. This is his alma mater, actually, but he's still the youngest coach in the FBS right now. And I think he's one of the most brilliant young minds in all of college football. But here's the problem with Arizona State. Arizona State now is in the Big 12. They missed the cutoff to make the Big 10 and the SEC, obviously. They were never going to make it to those Big 2 conferences. But what we've seen now is Arizona State is now becoming a farming system, in my opinion. And that's what Kenny Dillingham has to stop. Take, for example, the key losses, and then we'll return to this storyline. Jaden Rashada, this 5-star quarterback from 2 seasons ago, goes to Florida, then gets screwed over with his NIL, transfers to Arizona State. He stays there for a season, and now he's going to Georgia. Elijah Badger, 1,000-yard receiver, I'm pretty sure, if not close to it last year for Arizona State. Transfers to Florida. BJ Green, one of the best players on the team, defensive end, transfers to Colorado. He was the leader in sacks last year. But let's return to this conversation now. These good Arizona State players are not committed to sticking around to build this program back up, and they're leaving for quote-unquote better schools. And that's a major problem for Kenny Dillingham. He's got to figure out how to retain young talent and develop them to build a winning program. So that's where Arizona State is right now. Now, I've said all of this. Let's look at the key additions, because Kenny Dillingham didn't do a bad job here. Cole Martin, corner from Oregon. Hasn't really played a lot, but he is a really high-rated recruit from his class. 4-star transfer guy. I think that's going to be a really good staple starter for this Arizona State defense. Sam Leavitt is probably going to be the starting quarterback. He comes from Michigan State. Only a 3-star transfer, but Kenny Dillingham, if he knows how to do anything, it's develop a quote-unquote below-average quarterback. And then last but not least, Keyshawn Elliott, a linebacker from New Mexico State. Now, I actually watched his film from the Auburn game last year, and I don't think he's that bad. I definitely think he's going to have an impact on this linebacking unit. He's going to be in the starting lineup, so be sure to look out for him. He played a lot of weak side linebacker last year. I expect more of the same here. That's 3 guys that are really key additions to this Arizona State team. Now, next, let's talk about the defense. I've talked about Kenny Dillingham, and he's got to develop the program. But this year, specifically, the Arizona State defense must carry if this team is going to be competitive in every single game except for their first one. I think their first one's pretty much a win on the schedule. But everything else, the defense is going to have to keep this game low scoring. Usually, Arizona State wants to get into shootouts. They've had quarterbacks like Jaden Daniels in the past who could just throw the rock. But this season, I don't think that's the case. If they want to stay competitive, the game's got to be under 20 points. And then maybe they could talk about winning some football games. But the Arizona State defense, if they are not out there playing lights out football, it's going to be pretty rough. Now, I do want to point this out. Even though they've had some transfers, this team is still young and hopeful. There are 13 non-graduating players in the starting lineup right now. Lots of sophomores and freshmen to fill out the depth chart. As long as they can keep them around, I think that this could end up being a competitive team in 2 to 3 years, especially if Kenny Dillingham can work out how to recruit players into a losing program on the come up. Now, let's go ahead and get into our beloved record prediction. First game, I've already talked about it. It's versus Wyoming. I think Arizona State can easily take care of this one. Wyoming is not the program that it used to be when like Josh Allen was there and whatnot. I don't think they're nearly as good. I will go ahead and give Arizona State the win. But then at home versus Mississippi State, although I think Mississippi State is one of the worst rosters in the SEC, I definitely think they're better than Arizona State. Even though Mississippi State is on the road here, I will give them the win. Arizona State takes the loss. They go at Texas State. Now, this, in my opinion, is a lookout game for an upset. If there's any small conference program to beat Arizona State, it's going to be the Sun Belt, specifically Texas State. This is a over-talented roster for this conference, and I am a firm believer that Texas State could keep this game competitive. I will give Arizona State the slight edge here and give them the win. But then after that, you get off to a 2-1 start, but it does not get good from there. At Texas Tech versus Kansas versus Utah, at Cincinnati, at Oklahoma State versus UCF, at Kansas State. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 straight losses in my opinion. All of these other Big 12 teams are at a different place, especially when you talk about Texas Tech, Kansas, Utah, Oklahoma State, and Kansas State. Those are probably the 5 best teams in this conference, if not 5 of the top, 7. Arizona State is probably near the bottom of this league right now, and so I'm going to have to go ahead and say they lose every single one of those games. Maybe they can keep it competitive versus UCF at home, but outside of that, and maybe at Cincinnati, they don't have a top-tier caliber program as of right now, but Arizona State is outgunned on offense, and they're out-talented on defense, if that's not even a word, but you get what I'm saying. Arizona State does not have the facilities to win these games. 7 straight losses. I will give them this game versus BYU at home and call that a win. But 7 straight losses, your program might be in shambles after that. That could definitely be a loss. I see that right now happening in like 49% of my imagination. The other 51%, I will give Arizona State the win here. Then to finish off the season at Arizona, I think that's a loss. Arizona's got a really talented offense, and I don't think this Arizona State defense is going to be able to keep up with them. And then on top of that, speaking of keeping up, I don't think that the offense is going to be able to put up the points that Arizona could. So 3-9 season. It's not the greatest. It's certainly not the worst. It could get worse. You drop Texas State and you lose to BYU. You're 1-11. This program is probably on the bottom tier of the FBS ladder if that happens. All that being said, the way that you can turn this program around is by going around the Phoenix metro area, because that's where Arizona State is located. It's located in Tempe. You got to get NIL. You got to start spending millions of dollars to have players come in and stay. That's the thing. You got to get players to come in and stay. 3-9. That's my record prediction. That's going to do it for my Arizona State preview. Thanks so much for tuning in, guys. We're going to be talking about Arizona next time, and we'll see you next time.